You know, I talk a lot on this channel about horror movies, but what I have not really talked about so far is horror music. And that's something that I'm actually very interested in, is music that is creepy, unsettling, evokes an atmosphere that is kind of horrifying. And that's what I intend to talk about in this video, which is about ranking the Swans Monster Cuts from least good to best. And in case you're among the majority of the human population and you don't know what Swans is, Swans is the very long-running experimental music group band that has been putting out music since the early 80s. And they're headed up by the absolutely insane vocalist Michael Gira. Their lineup has changed a bunch throughout the years, but in more recent years, especially in like the 2010s and now moving into the 2020s, they've become well known for making these really big, long, epic songs that are like 20, 30, 40 minutes long. And so in this video, I'm going to take all of the Swans tracks that exceed 15 minutes in length. I'm referring to those as the monster cuts, and I'm going to rank them. And that's the criteria. And so, yeah, with that said, let's jump into the ranking. At number 15 is going to be Apostate. And a lot of Swans fans will probably look at me as, well, an apostate for ranking this one so low, but I'll explain my reasoning on this. So this is the closing track on The Seer, and it's very dark, very loud, very apocalyptic. It just kind of feels like the sonic equivalent to the end of the world, and that's really cool. I really like this song. The reason why I'm ranking it lower on the list, though, is because I think it works really well as a closer, but it doesn't really work as well as an individual song. It's not a song that I ever really feel compelled to go back and listen to on its own, but it does work really well as a closing track. I still love it. I love all the songs on this list. I think they're all great, and so even though this is at the bottom, I still highly recommend it. At number 14, I'm going to put Rope. This is the closing track off of the newest album, which is Birthing. And this song starts out with a marvelous post-rock build in the first half, where you begin with just this like tremolo picking pattern on an acoustic guitar, on like a single acoustic guitar string. And then that slowly builds and adds more elements and slowly grows into this massive crescendo that is just really quite something to behold. And it's really cool, and it takes up the first half of the track. The second half is not quite as big and impressive. It's a little bit more tame, a little bit more of a cool down and an outro to the album. But yeah, overall, the song's really cool. The main attraction is definitely that post-rock build in the first half. But the reason I'm putting this one a bit lower is for a very similar reason to Apostate. I think it works really well as a closing track. As an individual song, it's not one that I'm probably going to return to all that often. It just doesn't have as much, like, it doesn't have as many different phases and the kind of detail and stuff that I'm typically looking for, and that typically brings me back to a Swans Monster Cut again and again. At number 13, I'm going to put A Piece of the Sky. This is the penultimate track off of The Seer. It's the second to last song. And this one it focuses a lot more on atmosphere. It's got a lot of like very drony sections. And, you know, drone music is a genre that I'm not typically a really big fan of, but the exception is Swans. Like when Swans does drone music, it's different than any other artist out there that I've ever heard. They just do it so incredibly well. And so there are some really amazing drone sections on this song. Very atmospheric. The whole thing is a little bit eerie, but strangely upbeat for a Swans track, to be honest. The reason I'm putting it a bit lower is because it's not quite as big and broad and ambitious as some of the songs higher up on the list. The structure is a bit of a blessing and a curse because I do think it has a very unique structure where the first like 15 minutes of the song are basically like a giant lead up to this 5-minute acoustic song at the end. And so it's a very interesting song structure. It's unique and I like it, but it does also just lack the sort of big crescendos that some of the better Swans tracks have. Nevertheless, I still really like this one. A Piece of the Sky is at number 13. At number 12, I'm going to put Frankie M.
Frankie M. Frankie M.
This one is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. On the first half of the song, you have these really impressive post-rock waves that just feel like they're kind of crashing over you, and it's very cool, very great build-up. And then in the second half of the song, it settles into this very catchy groove where I think it has one of the most memorable earwormy tunes that I've ever heard in a Swans song. Those little repetitions of like, Frankie M, live again, are just really get stuck in my head. And from the first time I listened to it, it was basically stuck in my head. And so I really like that stuff. And there's certainly a very interesting, creepy aesthetic to a lot of portions of the song. And so, yeah, I really like it. I guess in terms of why it's a little bit lower on the list, there are some sections of the song that I think go on for a little too long. It's a little bit more, it's not quite as unique as some of the songs that are higher on the list, but still very creative, very, very well done, and somewhat ominous song. At number 11 is The Beggar Lover. This is the longest out of all the songs on this list, and it clocks in at over 40 minutes in length, which is just absolutely insane. And I gotta say, the first time I listened to it, I did not like this song. I felt that the various sections of the song failed to really connect to each other, and I was very disappointed that the song didn't come to a more epic crescendo by the end, because that's kind of what I was hoping for and expecting out of a song of this length. But on subsequent listens, I've been able to, I guess, do a better job of accepting this song on its own terms for what it is. And what it is a very long meditation on death and mortality and the inevitability that things are going to end. And yeah, as that experience, I think there are few songs out there that are ever going to give you that experience in the way that this one does, where it sort of forces you to confront the fact that you're going to die, which is kind of horrifying. And then also just kind of gives you that time to meditate on it and hopefully maybe to find some degree of peace and acceptance by the end of the song, because, you know, the song does definitely end in a more low-key way. And I think that's, now that I have kind of come to appreciate the song for what it is, I understand why they went with the ending that they did. So, yeah, while it definitely isn't everything that I initially hoped for, and it still does have some elements that I'm not 100% on board for, I still think this song is just absolutely insanely amazing and soul-crushing, but in the best way possible. At number 10, I'm going to put The Healers. This is the opening track off of the newest album, Birthing. And this one is another pretty straightforward one. It's got a very atmospheric first half where you've got, Michael Gira delivering some lyrics and great background music. And then you have the second half, which hits a groove and is pretty euphoric. It gives me that Swans high that I'm looking for, which is like this thing that Swans does where they will repeat the same note over and over again to the point that it actually starts to create this sense of euphoria. And so that Swans high is one of the big appeals, one of the big things that I come to, especially Swans modern music for. And this song definitely does a good job of giving me that, especially in the second half. Now, I do think it's definitely on the more straightforward side. It's definitely not like the most original Swans track that I've ever heard, and so that's why it's not at the top of the list. But I still think it's amazing, and it just delivers exactly everything that you want from a Swans song. At number 9 is going to be The Merge. This one is also off of Birthing, and I think this might have my favorite beginning to any Swans track ever, where you have this recording of this little kid just saying, "I love you, mommy," and then immediately after that, you just get pummeled by this wall of chaotic digital noise. And it's just such a great way to start a song. But then that eventually resolves itself into this very hypnotic, uneven, deliberately uneven, almost sloppy rock section. But it's done in a very deliberate way to create this sort of hypnotic atmosphere. And then that eventually transitions into a really just fantastic drone section that kind of just makes me feel like I'm floating in the void of space. With no connections or tethers to me. But then eventually all of that leads up to an acoustic song at the end. And based on just the song structure and the general vibe of the song, definitely the best comparison I can make for it is to A Piece of the Sky, which I mentioned earlier. This song kind of feels like, in my opinion at least, a better and more complete and more advanced version of A Piece of the Sky. I do think there's a couple things that A Piece of the Sky does better, like mainly the transitions. I think some of the transitions between the phases in The Merge are, fail to merge properly, but despite that, I think all the phases are so good on their own that it's pretty forgivable, and just overall, it's an insanely good song. At number 8 is I Am a Tower.
Over concrete islands and neon green palms.
This one, I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it's one of the most straightforward songs on the list. It has a great atmospheric beginning. I think the middle section drags a little bit. I wish it was tightened up a little bit. But then on the back section, you have a really great rhythm that gives me a really strong feeling of that Swans high that I'm always looking for. And so, yeah, great song overall, and that's really all I have to say about it. At number 7, I've got Cloud of Unknowing. This one comes from The Glowing Man, and similarly to I Am a Tower, I don't really have all that much to say about it. I guess the one thing that I would point out, though, is that this probably has the most accurate title out of any song on this list, because listening to the first half of the song especially feels like you are walking through this glowing orange cloud of mist and fog that is just obscuring everything around you and is just super disorienting, and you feel like you're about to like bump into a wall or something and that you just can't see in the fog. And so I really like that. I like how disorienting it is. I like the various instrumental little motifs and ideas that pop in, like those unsettling strings and stuff. Really great song, and that's about all I have to say about it. At number 6 is Helpless Child. And this is the point on the list where we are now talking about songs that are basically perfect, like 10 out of 10 songs, where I don't have really any complaints besides like minor nitpicks for the songs from this point on the list. So, I mean, I'm gonna stop complaining. And this one, this is the first ever Swans Monster Cut. This comes from off of Soundtracks for the Blind, which came out way back in like the late 90s. So this was way before this modern wave of what Swans is doing now. And while I'll definitely say Swans would go on to do much bigger and more ambitious things later on in their career, this song is still such an essential piece of Swan's catalog and really just musical history in general. Like this is an essential song that I feel like everybody should listen to at some point because it is just so great. And if you're wanting to get into Swans Monster Cuts, I think this is a good place to start because it's very simple and easier to comprehend than something like Cloud of Unknowing. This one really only has two phases. You've got the first half and the second half. And the first half is great. It's amazing. It's the part with the lyrics and stuff. But really, what makes this song one of the greatest songs of all time is the second half, which is just absolutely transcendental. It transports you to some kind of like spiritual dimension. And typically that's a very positive thing if you have a song that transports you to a spiritual dimension. This one, well, I'll let you decide if it's a positive thing or not, but it's definitely, the song's got an edge to it. It's got a darker side to it, but it's also very beautiful and amazing. And so, man, what can I say about this song? It's phenomenal. Go listen to it. Like, seriously, just go listen to it. At number 5 is Birthing. This is, in my opinion, the best song off of Swan's newest album of the same name. And, man, this one is just so good. It starts out with this very sparkly, abstracted intro section, and then that gradually transitions into this really big, grand section, rock section, where you have some just incredible, epic horn work that is absolutely breathtaking. And then the song sort of jump scares you with this very repetitive rock section that is one of the most euphoric sections in any Swan song ever. Just absolutely freaking feel like I'm on cocaine listening to that section. And then eventually things sort of mellow out and you get this more ambient section where Michael Gira is delivering all of these lyrics, I guess from the perspective of a baby in the womb who is like about to be born. And like, I mean, first of all, what an insanely creative perspective to write lyrics from on a song, but also just the way that it's done, the poeticism of the lyrics is fantastic. It's great. And then eventually the song hits you with just an absolutely skull-crushing final section that just kind of finishes things out on a brutal, heavy note. And yeah, I mean, what more can I say? It's an amazing song, and yet somehow things get even better from here on the list. At number 4 is The Seer. This, I would say, is by far the darkest song on this entire list. It really feels like you are watching in the bushes as some sort of cult ritual sacrifice is taking place, and this song is basically like the Sonic musical equivalent to that. The whole thing is just very sinister and threatening and ominous, and so I mean, you know, of course, that I absolutely eat it up. All right, at number 3, we have Bring the Sun. And this one is quite something. I'd say the first half of this song is probably the most powerful, mind-blowing thing that Swans has ever conjured from the ether. I mean, just the aggression and the repetition and the volume and the way they just keep chanting "Bring the Sun," like it has such a power to it that somehow it wouldn't surprise me if playing this song in the middle of the night actually resulted in the sun being summoned from behind the horizon, just by the sheer power and will and force of Michael Gira and his backing vocalists singing. But yeah, just truly an immense experience. If you have the time to set aside, you gotta listen to this thing. But then after the first half of the song, which is the Bring the Sun half, then you get into the second half of the song, which is titled something like I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's Toussaint l'Ouverture. I don't know. Okay, I don't speak French, but it's an ode, I guess, to a French revolutionary, and it features Michael Gira just doing things like yelling Toussaint into the void. It's wild and insane. And I'll just being totally fair, it's nowhere close to as grand and impressive as the first half of the song, but it's still very neat, and it does eventually culminate into a second crescendo on the back half of the song that's pretty satisfying. Plus, there's just some really kind of like cool ambient atmospheric field recordings of like people hammering on wood, and at one point there's a recording of there's a recording of horses like in the background kneeing and galloping and stuff. And so really weird, really interesting stuff. But overall, the whole Bring the Sun slash whatever the French name of the second half is, the whole overall experience of this giant 34-minute long song is really great, really impressive, and I highly recommend it. At number 2 is going to be She Loves Us. This might be the most underrated Swans track. Like, when people talk about To Be Kind, nobody really talks that much about She Loves Us. Everyone talks about Bring the Sun and Oxygen and Screenshot and A Little God in My Hands and some things we do. And like, those are all great songs. But honestly, She Loves Us is probably better than all of those songs. This, in my opinion, is the best song off of To Be Kind, and To Be Kind is the band's best album. So, I mean, that should count for something. And I gotta say, this thing, it starts off with this incredibly aggressive and highly repetitive section that just makes me feel like I am levitating up into the heavens. Truly one of just the wildest sections. And then that transitions into this absolutely unbelievable experimental breakdown slash deconstruction section where it just, listening to this section, I just picture Michael Gira sitting at a table with a cowboy hat, just taking apart rock music piece by piece and like putting it back together in some weird, horrifying, incorrect order, and yet it still sounds amazing. And like that is this middle section of the song. And then towards the second half of the song, it settles into a groove that is pretty repetitive, but not quite as repetitive as the beginning. And that gives a sort of stage, a background for Michael Gira to come in and deliver one of his most unhinged vocal performances ever. And that is saying something, because this man probably should be institutionalized if he is in real life, if he's anything like his song presence, which he isn't. He seems like a really nice guy. But yeah, the vocal performance in this section is absolutely insane. Like, hi, my name is fuck, 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 fuck. Like, that's actual lyrics on the song. Like, dude, what the hell? Seriously, did experimental rock peak here? This song is absolutely insane. I actually debated about putting it at number 1, but there's one song that, in my opinion, is even greater and even more essential than this one. Still, like, if you want to hear just experimental rock at its absolute peak, I mean, here it is. This is as great as it gets. But at number 1, there is one song that I think tops all of them, and that, of course, is going to be The Glowing Man. This song, like, what can I even say about this one that hasn't already been said? It is over 30 minutes in length, and yet there's never a dull moment. It's constantly changing and switching and going through different phases and stuff. I mean, there's a few phases that stand out to me are like the opening phase, which is this ambient drone section, and in the background you hear these sounds of like hammering and stuff, very similar to the stuff you heard on Bring the Sun. And then there's a section in the middle of the song where it hits a very heavy, repetitive section, and it again, like I've talked about with the Swans High, it's just incredibly euphoric and makes you feel like you're on drugs. And then there's, of course, the rhythm section in the towards the end of the song, where you get most of the lyrics of the song are delivered at that point. And my goodness, there are some hella weird lyrics on this song about him becoming a glowing man, and this figure of Joseph that is doing all of these really weird, creepy, disgusting things to him. Very weird, ominous, unsettling lyrics on a pretty weird, ominous, and unsettling song. But yeah, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest songs of all time. And so, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Swans Monster Cuts, my personal ranking of them after listening to these songs many, many times and thoroughly enjoying all of them. And yeah, that's what I have to say. I highly recommend you go listen to at least 1 or 2 of the songs, check them out, see if they're your thing, and I hope you do that. With that said, I will see you in the next review.